You need to talk about them, because when SJP went public with what happened, not only did we draw the absolute ire of the school and the administration, but the outside world at large completely crashed down on us. So people in SJP, I would say for 4 to 6 weeks, met every single night for at least 2 hours a night, and that's just the main meeting. We had subcommittees, we had working groups. People stopped going to classes. I'm dead. People, fail out of classes, or it's a serious thing. Like, it's not. You're gonna have to give up some things to make something much bigger happen. I mean, in the end, obviously we're all here, and I know I'm preaching to the choir, but what the hell are we at school for if it's not for something better, So what happened was the school tried to depoliticize the action, reframe divestment, discredit SJP, and really remove us from the mainstream, which is something that we did a little bit ourselves. Which what happened was, when we wrote our press release, which I don't have up right now, but we could have been more clear, and this is something that we didn't do as well. And we went off and we we said that the school had divested, which was not incorrect at all. But at the same time, we didn't undercut the administration's response in the process of doing that. So we allowed them to immediately refute our statement on the grounds that they had divested from an entire fund. I didn't even specify this, excuse me, but the way Hampshire is invested and the way a lot of your schools are invested is in mutual funds. And we targeted 5 companies out of a mutual fund, or 6 companies, excuse me, out of a mutual fund that was about 200 companies. Okay, so how a mutual fund works is you can't go ahead and say, okay, there's 200 companies, I'll remove my investments for 3 or 4 of those companies. You have to divest from the entire mutual fund. Okay, so that speaks to how incredible it was that the board divested in the first place, but at the same time, they used that as a way to say, no, we divested from an entire mutual fund for a whole range of reasons, ranging from labor conditions, environmental, this idea that all these things exist in some major vacuum and that they apply to the entire world. But when we went out our press release and we sent it to thousands of journalists, and that's another thing, is that it's really important to have all your ducks lined up before you go into this, is that you can't just divest and then call one person and say, okay, we divested. You need to let a lot of people know at once. And there are media outreach workshops, which I would really recommend people go to, because that's a really important part. And that's not necessarily something that any of us are trained in, is how to approach the media, how to deal with the media, how to organize the media. I mean, like, in the end, we are students, We're not a public relations firm. We don't have the kind of money to hire one. So this is something that you really need to keep in mind, and you need to think about all these different factors. So what happened was, we made our press release, and in reality, when the administration was able to deny and create a counter story that was legitimate to the extent that they divested from an entire mutual fund, they cut us out of the mainstream press, by and large. Because the press, everything goes like that. And if there's any kind of 2 stories or a refutement or any kind of doubt, especially when it comes to student organizing on a campus, which is not their major front line, like what they want to talk about, they're just going to write off the story and say, we don't have time for this. The news moves so fast that if you can't get them in that moment with a clear message that addresses everything, then they're just going to write you off. Granted, we got into press around the world, and what was really great was that we had people in our group who came from all over the world. So when we sent our press release, we sent it out in 10 languages, and the school really could only deal with the English language stuff. And so the other stuff got all around the world, which is amazing. So I think, and actually what the school did, which I don't have a verification of, but we heard from a source inside the administration, is that they hired a PR firm. Like, they spent thousands, I'm sure tens of thousands of dollars trying to get our message out of the mainstream. And for a school that doesn't have a very big operating budget, imagine what a school of 50,000 will do, where they have an endowment of, 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars. They're going to do whatever they can to cut you out, to vilify you, and to make sure that your message doesn't reach the press. And what SJP did when the school divested, and we obviously were going to go public, is that we knew that divestment means absolutely nothing if no one knows about it. And what really this conference is about is that divestment in Hampshire doesn't mean anything unless it becomes something bigger. And that's why going public and doing it the right way was something that was really important. I think on another note, something that we weren't as successful with in the process of going public, and really was just a question of like how much power and time we had, and the energy that we put in, was that we didn't, when we reached out and went out outside the campus, we really didn't spend enough time working on our own campus. And so what happened a lot was people within the school said, wait, I signed this petition. I didn't know about going to the press, or that's not necessarily the message that I thought was going to be sent out. And so one thing that we didn't necessarily do as well is, at the same time as trying to reach the world press and the press all over the country, is that our campus at large got left a little bit put a little bit on the back burner, which was really hard to deal with because at the time we're trying to fight a lot of really big, powerful people, media, you name it, to have the people who have been supporting us before, doubting us or questioning us, was an incredibly difficult thing. And I think that communication with the student body throughout the entire process, which is something we did all the time, but not as effectively when we went public, is something that's really important. Because people are going to doubt it, and you know the arguments, they come out, they're really powerful. All the media is not interested in the story that we're trying to present. They're usually interested in trying to refute it. So when someone reads on XYZ newspaper refuting your campaign or the message you're trying to say, they're going to say, wait a second, like this newspaper is really well known and they're saying this, and I don't know, what are these kids talking, like these students talking about? Maybe they're at school. So be ready to say, look, I got someone else who can pay money too. And I don't know to what extent you have those connections or you can do that, but it's important to try and do that. At least at the very least, you need to think about fundraising in the moment. You need to think about doing phone-a-thons. You need to try and get all your alumni lists. You need to call these people, because these are also the people that are going to be calling the school and either saying, this is great, or they're going to call and they're going to say, I'm not giving any more money to your school anymore. And if you think the power in the school comes only from the administration or from so on and so forth, really the power in your school, it comes from your business office and it comes from your alumni relations. Okay? They are the people who send out the message of what your school is. Okay? Another thing that's really important than what we did was we had conversation with our, with the admissions. Okay? Because admissions goes on, and what happens when the admissions office calls the administration and they say, look, we just got a call from 500 parents who said they're rescinding their students' applications to your school, which happens. So you need to go and you need to talk to them in admissions before you do this. Okay? You need to talk to them about divestment beforehand, because if this all happens and then the administration or the board of trustees gets letters from every single branch of the college that they're getting backlash from all these different places, they're going to think long and hard about how they want to craft their message and if they want to be a part of an institutional statement, so on and so forth. So then, if you look at this letter that Alan Dershowitz sent, you then can look at our president's response, which by and large is almost a cut and paste of his 3 recommendations. And he not only sent this out publicly as an open letter to the Jerusalem Post, but he also, on the private website for Hampshire students and alumni only, published this letter to Alan Dershowitz. So it's not like this was just him responding to the wider world, but he wanted everyone on campus to know about it. And if you just type in Alan Dershowitz plus Ralph Hexter on Google, you can get all these things. But I think this is kind of try to give a good overview, and I'll leave a lot to questions. One other thing I didn't mention is that after divestment, after the motion to have divestment happen, the school brought in a foreign investment, outside investment screen to screen the whole thing. So then they can say, look, we brought in this investment screen, which then says that out of the 200 companies, 150 companies are problematic. So I'm getting the sign that I'm running out of time here. But essentially, that's a little bit of a nuts and bolts overview of what happened. So if there's any questions, I don't know if we have time, but if there isn't, certainly feel free to come talk to me or anyone in SJP about what happened, and we can fill you in. And also, like I said, I'll make myself available to give out any resources or presentations that I talked about. So thank you.